We're going to start a series today that's entitled Down to Earth. And we're going to be looking at what it meant for Jesus to come and what it means for Jesus to send us out in his name. It's that twin thing of what it meant, what it means, and what it might mean. And the title is Down to Earth. I wonder how many of you, this is not a rhetorical question, I wonder how many of you would like to think of yourselves as being down to earth. Just put your hand up if you think, I'm down to earth. Just let me see your hands. Yeah, I guess most of us, because what's the alternative? I'm not sure what the alternative is to down to earth. Let's have some feedback. What? Pardon? Head in the clouds. Maybe that would be the alternative. Any of you would like to think of yourself as, yes, I'm a head in the clouds person? No, at times, yeah. I mean, other people may say that about you, but it's probably not something you'd say, well, in an interview, anything you'd like to tell us about yourself? Yes, I'm a head in the clouds person. When you think about the idea of being down to earth, what sort of things might you mean by that? Practical, approachable, common sense. Anybody can play, even those of you in the cheaper seats can play. But any other thoughts about what it means to be no airs and graces, likable, willing to help, real and honest, willing to listen? Say again? Empathy, empathetic. Northern. Northern. Essentially like us. They're great words. When we think about being down to earth in this context, as we begin to think about Advent and Christmas, of course, what we talk about is incarnation. And what we mean by incarnation is God who comes in flesh, as a human. And when we talk about that, when we think about it being down to earth, all those words you used to explain what down to earth means, we can see in Jesus. All of them. He was northern as well. He was. He was a northerner. He probably spoke with a northern accent. And when he went to Jerusalem, people went, he's a bit thick, isn't he? Because he spoke with a northern accent. I think I've told some of you this before. I went to college in London in a previous century. And when I was a student in that college in London, someone else who came from London said to me one day, "You're quite intelligent." For a northerner, I still know where he lives. We're going to think about the down-to-earth King, the down-to-earth God. And to help us, I've asked Dan to come and read for us this morning. So Dan is a substitute reader. It should have been Shirley, but Shirley's not well. So look at Dan with sort of just squint your eyes and you will see Shirley. Practically the same. Thank you.
In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave him life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. God sent a man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn not with physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son.
Brilliant, thanks. What version of the Bible were you reading from there?
NLT?
NLT, very good. Very good. John begins his gospel. So he's going to tell you the story of Jesus, and he begins his gospel by giving us the biggest view of Jesus possible. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. We might unpack that all day and still not get to the bottom of it. But let me just give you a headline. Lots of us wonder what God's like. Lots of us wonder what God thinks of us. And the gospel writer says this: just look at Jesus. Just look at Jesus. You see, when we think of God and in the beginning, this sort of creation story, we might think of God as being all-powerful, and indeed he is. We might think of God as ruling over all things, and indeed he does. But in our world, we have a way of thinking about power. Power is getting things done. Power is overriding what other people might think. Power is making sure that your will is done. But Jesus comes different. Jesus comes differently. It's not the power you might imagine. This unusual king becomes one of us. Remarkable. This unusual king, God from eternity, becomes one of us. When the early Christians were beginning to get their heads around what it meant to follow Jesus, and when they started to gather together, one of the things they did was they wrote hymns so that when they were together they could sing. And the songs that they sang, or the hymns that they sang, were their beliefs. And one of the earliest hymns was written down by the Apostle Paul when he wrote to the Philippian church, and he wrote this: in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. That's what Paul says. When you're thinking about how you get on with one another, think the same as Jesus. And then he quotes the hymn, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And those of you that know the hymn know that it goes on and tells a story about Jesus who came, serves, and then God raised him from the dead. But listen to the first part. Jesus, who being in very nature God, didn't consider his equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. It's just worth thinking about that for a minute. Just pause. Jesus comes. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The Word came and became one of us. And he didn't use his power and authority for his own ends, his own advantage. I wonder what privileges you think you have. Some of us have the privilege of money. Some of us have the privilege of education, which makes us intelligent for a northerner. Lots of us have the privilege of health and living in a time and a place where if you're ill, they can treat you. We have the privilege of freedom. We have the privilege of a nationality, some of us. The idea of being a free citizen. Some of them might feel we have the privilege of age, either because we are very old and very wise, or very young and very active. Some of us might feel that we have a position in society. You have a job of a certain standing. You have a social position. When people ask you, what do you do? People go, oh. You might think your privilege is gender. Some of you might think, actually, because of being a man, I have certain privileges. Because of being a white man of a certain age, at a certain social position, with a certain education, with a certain way of dealing with life, it's a privilege. Some of you might think your race is a privilege. There may be others. Just turn to the person next to you and tell them what privileges you think you have. You might use that list or you might find something else, but just find someone. And if you don't like doing this, just ask them. You go first. Okay. Any of you come up with a privilege that I've not listed? Anybody got an extra one? Gone? Choices. The ability to make choices. I think Ian suggested to Morag that her privilege was being married to him. I'm not sure, but a choice. But the ability to make choice. Any others? Did you think of any others? Yeah. Knowing Jesus. Thank you. You gave the right answer. The rest of the church, disappointing to be honest, but it's good. Yeah. Your upbringing. Yeah. The way you were brought up. Some people have a rubbish start in life and other people have a privileged start in life because they're loved. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work particularly. Any of you in the room go, I have no privileges. Yeah. A privilege is something you were given. It's not necessarily something you've earned. It's just because of who you are and when you were born and who you were born to and what's happened to you along the way. Lots of us along the way get knocked. There's no doubt about that. But actually the privileges remain. So here's the question. If we follow the Jesus who came and stood amongst us, but didn't use his equality with God for his own advantage, how do I use my privilege for others? And how do I stop protecting my privilege? How can you use your advantage? Think about all those advantages. How can you use those that you have for the sake of others? And how can you not be so guarded that you demand that people respect you? One of the things that young men particularly as they're sort of like they're growing up, one of the things that young men struggle with is this idea of, are you disrespecting me? And that can lead to all sorts of fights and knives and stuff. But I think there's a sense in which as you get older, we just become much more able to deal with it in different ways. Are you not giving me the respect I deserve? Well, Jesus came and he gave up the privileges that he had in order that others would receive them. I think it's the call on our lives. The unusual king came as one of us. It's the bit we've just read. He comes and Jesus does take on our form. Jesus wasn't born to a family of priests. He wasn't born to a family of Roman citizens. He wasn't born into a family of the ruling party. He wasn't born into a family of Pharisees, the teaching people of the day. He was born into a family of tradespeople. And for much of Jesus' life, we assume Jesus worked as a tradesman. We know very little actually about Jesus' life, in truth. Just the 3 years that the gospel writers concentrate on. A little bit earlier, but very little in between. From the ages of 12 to around, tradition tells us 30, we don't know much. What was he doing? Well, he was probably working in a workshop. He was probably working with his father, a stonemason and a carpenter, those two trades together. For 18 years, you could go and buy a table made by Jesus. I bet it was a good one. Because John says, the word became flesh and blood, and this is a sort of like a translation really of what we read earlier, pitched his tent amongst us. It's that word for dwelt amongst us. It's that idea of pitching your tent, fragile, vulnerable, one of us. Some of us know, don't we, that sense that we've seen it in other people, and some of you have seen it in your own lives. So just an ordinary week, and on one of the days, something happens. And suddenly life changes completely. You get a diagnosis. You hear some news. They tell you you're going to be made redundant. You have a car crash. Just a normal day. One day. And what that one day does for each of us is remind us that we are remarkably fragile. Because most of us spend most of our time thinking we're in charge. One day, Jesus comes and pitches his tent alongside our tents. And it's here that he works. Someone has said, incarnation always looks ordinary before it looks miraculous. Incarnation always looks ordinary before it looks miraculous. He came and lived in our streets, our cities. And yet, the unusual King is full of grace and truth. When we read this passage from John's Gospel, and we'll read it again at the carol service, the danger is we pull it out of its context and we forget that this is just the beginning of 21 chapters where John tells you a story about Jesus. And what he's going to do in John's Gospel, and what John does, that the other Gospel writers don't do in the same way, he writes in 7. So he'll tell you 7 stories where Jesus meets people. 7 sayings, 7 miracles. It's just really well put together. And this bit that we've just read together is the beginning of that. So where will Jesus be involved Well, he'll be involved with a spiritual searcher who was a Pharisee, someone looking for, tell me the truth about what I can believe. He was involved with an ashamed Samaritan woman who had lived a life of being used and thrown away. He was going to be dealing with desperate government officials whose child was so very ill. He was going to deal with hungry crowds and long-term sick people, unfaithful women and self-righteous sexist men. He's going to deal with dead people and raise them to life. And all of these people, all of these situations, all of these scenes people would be suspicious of. You don't want to get too close to her. You don't want to touch them. You don't really have time to feed these people. You don't need to get involved. Don't get too close to a dead man because you will become unclean. All of these situations would have been seen to be suspicious. But Jesus comes with grace and truth into those situations. I was thinking about this idea of him coming with grace and truth, and I was thinking it is like, you know, when you get a really shining light in the darkness, the light creates safe spaces for people to know what's actually happening. When Jesus comes, he comes with truth, but he comes with grace. And the grace allowed for safe spaces to be formed in which people could hear the truths about themselves, about their past, and about their future. At our best, when we are together as church, what we do is we create spaces of grace and truth. Safe spaces where you can be told the truth about how loved you are, about how forgiven you can be, about the purpose that you can have, about the past that isn't destined to be your future. At our best, in our conversations with one another, we create a space that is safe, in which we can hear better news. And Jesus did it all the time with those people. And I don't know about you, but I find myself amongst these people from time to time. It's not them. Quite often it's me. And Jesus comes with safety and clarity. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the Word came and dwelt amongst us. Oh God, what do you think of me? Oh God, what have you got for me? Oh God, how do you make sense of those times where I just disappoint myself, let alone anybody else? Oh God, what will you do for those that I love? Oh God, what will you do about this situation that feels like it's a closed door? Oh God, what can you do for things that look like they've died and have no future? Oh God, can you rescue me? And Jesus comes full of grace and truth, safe and clear. When Dan read before, he talked about how Jesus came, and John reminded him that he came to his own people, and his own people said, we'd rather go on the way we are. Some things just seem too good to be true, don't they? This week I got the household lottery on your street letter. Anybody else get that? So other people got it. No, see, that's disappointment. If it had only been my house, I would have thought I would have won. But other people, I got it, I saw what it was, put it in the bin. They're on telly telling me you can win hundreds of thousands of pounds. I put it in the bin. Just out of interest, did any of you apply? I just need to know who that is. We've got a gift aid form we would like to put it in the bin. Why? It's too good to be true, isn't it? Never happens to people like me. I don't know anybody who's won the postcode lottery, do you? Doesn't happen to people like us, does it? I mean, they say there's good news, but it doesn't really happen. And Dan read, Jesus came to his own, but his own said, we'll keep what we've got. It's not ideal, but we'll keep what we've got. But to those who received him, he gave the right to be called children of God. To those who receive him, to those who pitch their hope on him, to those who go, well, what have I got to lose? To those who go, I want what you've got. To those who watched Jesus and said, I'd like to be in on this. To those who received him, he gave the right to be called children of God. That God who was from the beginning, that God who came and dwelt amongst us. To those of us who struggle with addiction, to those of us who struggle with shame, to those of us who struggle with the past, to those of us who struggle with fear, to those of us who wonder whether we're loved, to those of us who fear what other people think of us, to those who receive Jesus, he gives you the right to be called children of God. And then he says, let's follow the King's ways. Let me use my privilege and my privileges for others. Please, God, would you allow the ordinary to become miraculous? Dear God, would you make us agents of safe grace and clear truth? Dear God, would you make our lives count? Dear God, can we walk in the footsteps of Jesus even though we're not always sure what that means? Dear God, can we do it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock when we're back in the ordinary space again? Dear God, can you do it with our families when they drive us nuts? Dear God, can we follow Jesus?